Hello and welcome. We're glad you could join us on Journalists Hangout. That's the Sunday edition. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Today on the program, Lagos police arrest 243 violators of COVID-19 safety protocols as Nigeria's coronavirus cases rise to 99,063 after record daily new infection rate of 1,585. Professor Wole Soyinka, the Nobel laureate, Senator Ike Ekweremadu urged federal government to seek foreign help to secure Nigeria. As Niger State Governor meets with President Buhari, pleads for more security personnel. Also, NIN registration centers brace for deluge of enrollees after the suspension of strike. And later on the show, House of Representatives moves to criminalize secret recruitment by federal government agencies. I will be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Sam Ibemere. Journalists Hangout starts now. Welcome. As a country, we let down our guards in a hurry in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic, and now the virus is surging to hunt us. The number of confirmed cases has risen to 99,063 after another daily record high infection of 1,585 confirmed by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC), all thanks to non-compliance with safety measures. But Lagos, which remains the epicenter of the pandemic in Nigeria, is stepping up compliance enforcement. At the weekend, the State Police Command arrested 243 persons during a raid on Victoria Island and Surulere areas to enforce compliance measures. The raid was led by the State Commissioner of Police, Hakeem Odumusu, who said the command will do all it can to ensure adherence with COVID-19 safety protocols. Let's share that moment when some of the arrests were made.
Go this way. Go inside.
Can I know why you're arresting me?
Go that way. Go like this. Go like this.
In the meantime, the flagrant abuse of COVID-19 safety measures by citizens is fueled by lack of belief in the existence of the virus in the country by most. But a peep into how coronavirus patients struggle to survive at isolation centers will burst that bubble of such cynical persons. Our correspondent, Adidoja Salama Deni, was at the Infectious Disease Center, Yaba, Lagos, to capture how COVID-19 patients are battling to survive the second wave of the pandemic. Let's share that story with you as well.
The past 1 week has seen a geometric progression of infections of COVID-19 in Nigeria. Lagos is still the epicenter, recording more infections. Since the new variant of the virus was discovered in the UK, many countries around the European country restricted movement into the UK. Nigeria, one of the UK's ally, refused. Rather, the government insisted travelers must produce a negative PCR test before coming into the country. This directive left a gap for some unscrupulous Nigerians to cash in and make BRICS business. This corrupt practice has made it possible for some travelers from high-risk countries to find their way into Nigeria with the new variant, which doctors say it is deadlier. The second wave, they say, is more aggressive and spreads like wildfire than the first, and the vaccine is far from finding its way into Africa. Months ago, the ICU had few patients, most not using ventilators. But now, the use of oxygen is on the rise. These are the used oxygen cylinders from this ward alone. About 70 were used overnight. They are rolled out for refuel. Filled ones are also rolled in with the same speed. After meeting with the Commissioner for Health, who has now relocated his office from Alausa to the IDH on the directive of the incident commander, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Our first port of call was the Bioban, is one of the red zones. This is the COVID ward. Most of the patients here can hardly breathe on their own without oxygen. Globally, there is oxygen supply chain crisis. The demand for oxygen overweighs the supply.
This facility here can produce 60 large cylinders in 24 hours. That's a day. So that's very helpful and will add to our daily consumption of oxygen, which we're currently using about 300 cylinders a day.
The flow rate of oxygen that the average COVID-19 patient uses is 15 liters per minute. Now it tripled. A regular sick patient uses 5 liters. At the IDH, the consumption of oxygen is now very high, as the life of most patients with COVID-19 hangs in the balance.
It seems like it's affecting a younger age group. It seems that when you catch this COVID, that it can cause respiratory failure faster than the first wave. And we don't want people to die. So, we want to be able to admit people in a way. So the place is almost full, but we have more capacity outside and other isolation centers. So Lagos has excess capacity.
People come in breathless, and then when you measure the oxygen concentration level in their blood system, some come in with very severe oxygen concentration level. Then the organs of the body cannot begin to suffer some form of damage. And this damage will actually become irreparable. Somebody coming into the hospital with an oxygen level of, say, 20%, because we've seen them 40%.
The only thing to keep their weak lungs alive is this oxygen. A struggle to stay alive. It's a fight they must win. But others with underlying ailments like obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetes, and even chain smokers in most cases, are helpless, as COVID in most cases wins the battle.
Patients from Alimosho, Ikorodu, Ketu, Ojota, Alapere, Iponri, Epe, Badagry, Surulere, among other Lagos local council areas, are here receiving treatment. To say that COVID-19 is the disease of the rich is a fallacy. Emmanuel here is from Surulere area of the state.
It's a terrible experience. It's a terrible experience. You cannot be comfortable for anything. You're not comfortable. You don't even feel what you're eating.
This first place I went to was I think the Holding Bay.
So what did you see there?
All of a sudden, the next day, the man just died. I think loss of oxygen, the man died. And they said before then, somebody had died. So it's real, it's real. If they can ban public outings, honestly.
Before now it was fever, loss of smell, loss of taste. But right now it's just intermittent cough. Right?
48 hours before this recording, 7 people have died. More are lying on the sick bed, and more stretched into the facility, showing the severity of the second wave of COVID-19 in the country. But the frontliner health workers are not giving up as they fight to keep all their patients alive.
Skepticism, I don't care attitude, and relaxation of safety protocols and guidelines have been said to have led many into that hole. Until people adhere to safety protocols, the second wave will not abate, and the third wave might knock harder. Adedoja Salam Adeniyi, TVC News, Yaba, Lagos.
A very, very humbling report there, particularly for those who are still skeptical about the existence of COVID-19 or who have doubts or misgivings in their minds. COVID-19 is indeed real. Welcome once again to Journalist Hangout on TVC, as I also welcome my guests, Babajide Kolade Otitoju Bikil, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And Sam Ibemere, it's good to have you join us.
My pleasure.
Yeah, compliments of the season.
Same here.
Yeah, seeing you for the first time this year. So, one of the most profound points from that report is the entry of the new strain of the coronavirus into Nigeria that was discovered in the UK. Bearing that in mind, first of all, gentlemen, how do we deal with this reality? BQ.
We've got to take this reality seriously, because we joke a lot in our country. We joke a lot. Look at a country like UK. A second layer of lockdown has happened. I saw a picture of Sam at Busby Way, in Manchester, on the day Manchester United played a big game. No one on the streets. You've got to have something very important to do to be out there on the streets. And these are places where laws are obeyed. The citizens take the laws seriously, because if you run foul of the law, you know what you get. The law is no respecter of persons over there. In our country, the provisions of the law or of our laws are applied differently, depending on who runs foul of the law. And that's why people keep talking about saner climes and all that. We have contributed to making it difficult for people to look at our country and describe it as one of the saner climes. Our conduct is sometimes downright irresponsible, but we're always quick to blame the people in government. Look at some of these fellows who are picked up at the nightclub. Many of them are Nigerians not based here. They're on holidays. They just felt, okay, let us go to a nightclub. It's not a bad idea to go and unwind in a nightclub, right? I do not object to that form of relaxation, but you know there's a curfew in town. You know that at this time, there is a set of rules that government rolled out in the wake of this second wave of the pandemic. And you know that you cannot go to nightclubs at this time. You cannot go to the beach at this time. I've seen arrests made at the beach. And some of those guys were even due to return to the UK on Monday, which is tomorrow. You cannot sidetrack curfew in the UK. You can now breach COVID-19 protocols in the UK, but you think it's convenient to come to your country and breach it because you think you can always bribe your way through, that you will get by. That's not how to build a great nation. If we want our country to be among the saner climes that we always talk about, because indeed there are saner climes, when you have a situation in which some people in another part of the world, the ideas shape our world, the ideas make our world better to live in, you cannot say that that's not a saner climb. You cannot say that that's not a better place. That is the way it is. Some people came up with inventions that make our work better, our world better. And even in America, people talk about, across the world, people talk about the best countries to live in. And you see those Scandinavian countries listed, you know, among the best places to live in. Those are saner climes. There are reasons for which they are deemed among the best places to live in. There are reasons. Laws are obeyed. In some cases, in those places, the prisons are literally empty. There's no reason to take to crime. You go to Monaco, the Principality of Monaco, crime is almost non-existent. Why would you steal? Even corruption. Corruption is almost totally defeated in some countries of the world because you can't get away with being corrupt. Why would a country like Spain be sending prisoners to a country, to a Scandinavian country? Because their own prisons, they are literally empty. There are 5-star prisons in Norway.
5-star prisons.
Yes, you will see with golf course, with everything. All the trappings of a big hotel. So it's not a saner climb, Abi. Where are the criminals? So this is the thing that we are talking about. Let Nigerians also contribute to making their country one of the saner climes. The things that we do will not help us to get there. You can't leave America, you can't leave Canada, you can't leave the UK, where you know that you'll be dealt with when you commit crime, and come to your own country and just willfully disobey the laws. I mean, it's unfair. It's unfair, and they know it. Some of them are due to travel tomorrow. Even when they get out of disobey, they get fined or something. They will have to pay more for tickets. You pay more for tickets because you chose to disobey the COVID-19 protocols. You felt nobody, in our country we don't enforce the laws. Nobody will arrest me. Even if they arrest me, I can always bribe my way to freedom. That's not how to get to our dream saner climb. That's not how to get there. We've got to help the government to defeat this disease. Deceiving ourselves that COVID-19 does not exist, I mean, it's just downright stupid. You can't say that it does not exist. We watch people being killed. We've seen people being killed. Prominent people, even non-prominent people. Look at a man in the UK, I mean in the US, with one of the best hospitals owned by an African in the US. He came home to bury his uncle, the man Bemudu. I'm sure you've seen the story. Yeah. After burying the uncle, this second wave caught him here in our country, and he died. Very comfortable, one of the biggest medical practice by an African in the US, in Memphis. So, but people still say, oh, it does not exist. We want to be given the latitude to simply do what we want. In future, when we are looking back at how difficult it's been for us to defeat this pandemic, we will still blame government. We say, oh, government didn't take the right measures. Even when they took the right measures, we were refused to comply. People were traveling. When they banned interstate travel, we were traveling at night. We would bribe the police and get away. I just hope that for those who have chosen to be responsible, to obey the protocols, that they will not change. They will continue. I'm impressed that the Alaafin of Oyo has had to postpone his 50th coronation anniversary because it's not consistent with the times. And I saw where the Attorney General told the NDLA to stop his recruitment drive because it's not consistent with the time. It's such a shame that we are getting people to do NIN at this time. That's something that government has to look at. If you are really committed to checking the possible explosion of this second wave, then anything that compels Nigerians to gather, we've got to do something about it. Otherwise, people will just see us as hypocrites. Oh, they are saying people should, churches should not congregate at full capacity, but they can allow people to go and gather at NIMC offices and outlets in huge numbers to do registration. So I just hope that this thing will not get worse. I don't blame Ali Baba, who was swearing at people, because one of the painful things is to watch someone who was on admission beside your bed die in your presence. And then you see people still say it does not exist. It's just a trick by people in government to steal money. Look, it's just downright lack of exposure is the reason why people will talk in this manner. They don't need COVID-19 to steal money. There was no COVID-19 when Abacha was stealing as if money will run out of circulation.
Existence.
There was no COVID-19 and he was stealing. So they should stop deceiving themselves that, oh, it's because some people want to steal. As I always say, pray that it doesn't get to your door. When it gets to your door, you will need a miracle, since you do not believe that it exists.
Instructive there. And as I come to you, Sam, while Babajide wants us to look inwards and take responsibility individually and collectively as citizens, I'd like you to address two issues. First, are we faced with an option of calling for a lockdown, a second lockdown, in the face of the second wave? Secondly, from our correspondence report also, there is remarkedly a refusal to ban flights from the country that has discovered the second wave. So how much of responsibility should government take at that level? And the corruption bedeviling the purchase of PCR test results as well at the governmental level?
Okay, first, I would like to look at the report that was shared, by our colleague. And for me, it's very disturbing. Anyone who is privileged to have watched that documentary and still feels that the challenges that we face as a country is a fluke, then it's not a very serious person. One particular area of the footage that caught my attention was when she reported that 70 bottles of oxygen
cylinders
were used in one night. I don't know how else you can get anyone who is reasonable, to believe that this is indeed a very huge, challenge that we have on our hands. For those who still have doubts, I think they should be looking at the figures. In Nigeria, we're talking about over 90,000. Globally, it's almost 90 million, with almost 1.9 million people reported death. And I wonder how people still think that this is, a joke. you talked about taking responsibility, and I think that is, the best way we can handle this. We're people who are often not too quick to take issues, very seriously. A lot of deaths have been reported. People we know, very close, families, and you wonder why people still, have doubts. But back to one of the questions that you raised, the issue, concerning how our government, should respond to the second wave that has gripped the world, and whether we should pretend as if, we're not affected. I think that the government has, responded, to that issue, and they say they are watching, the development very closely. One that, strikes me was the government saying if we shut our borders because we want to keep, visitors away, or our citizens who are coming back into the country. Of course, what they will do is probably, land close to our borders, probably Benin or Ghana, and then do a road trip. So it's a very complex thing. And I think that, unlike the situation we had the very first time, the response this time has been fairly commendable. I think that government decision to, lay out protocols for those who are coming to the country, what they need to do, has helped to manage the situation. It was also very interesting when government came out and said, it came up with a list, that was intended to name and shame those who refuse to obey, the rules that have been laid down by the authorities. And I'm talking about the 100 persons whose passports were listed and their names, broadcast all over the place. And I think that was a brilliant idea in terms of sending very clear signals, to Nigerians, and indeed those who are coming to the country, that it is no joke, at this time. So I think that government on its part is responding. It probably wouldn't be the best that we want to get, but I think the government has shown enough seriousness to combat the pandemic that is currently facing the country. Could you just remind me of the second issue that you talked about?
Lockdown. Should we resort to another lockdown?
Okay, yeah. I think that's going to be a very difficult one to contend with. Already we have an economy that is in recession. I've heard government say that, considering the, under lockdown would do the economy a lot of damage. And I think that what the government has tried to do is to say, no, we're not going to do that. I share that sentiment, because the level of, hunger in the land, it's terrible. We are yet to come out of the last lockdown. We have various sectors of the economy still struggling to, raise their heads above water. A second one will be, a disaster, in my view. So I think that the government, appreciates that point, and that is why, even though it has spoken, severally about, or it has threatened severally that it was going to lock down, I think the government is not going to be in a hurry, to want to do that. And that's because of the huge setback that the economy may face, if that is done.
But then, in that regard, what option is open to entertainment business owners? Like, the nightclub we just saw there.
Yes.
During the Yuletide, they, posted huge losses because of the restrictions placed on them. So should there be some form of regulation, to ensure that they comply with the safety protocols? Or we're faced with a second wave, with the new strain. Should it be, a resort to a lockdown?
Yeah, I think that what we need to do here is to balance between the need to survive and then the challenge of everyday living. I think that it's important that we remain alive. It's only those who are alive that can talk about business. Conducting businesses. The government has laid out what the rules are. What we witnessed yesterday and maybe prior is the case of enforcement. Any society where you find disobedience to rules and order, you are heading towards a failed state. And I think that this is meant to be an interim measure. I mean, nobody hopes or prays that the challenges that we face, as a nation, as a people, is one that will drag on for ages. But government is saying, and I share that sentiment, that while this is being contained, while this pandemic is being contained, this set of rules must be obeyed or must be adhered to. And that's what the government is asking for. If there's a curfew that has been placed between 12 midnight and 4 p.m., so be it. I mean, you don't obey the rules elsewhere, and then when you walk into our country, you want to do something different. If the government says, observe social distancing, so be it. If government says wear a mask, so be it. So these are basic rules. And for any society that is thinking tomorrow, that is thinking in terms of sustainability, you just don't conduct yourself in a manner that could put the rest of the citizens in danger. So yes, there are concerns, that businesses will suffer, but it is important that we also take very serious measures, globally accepted, protocols to also stay alive, because it's only those who stay alive that can conduct businesses. That's my take on the matter.
Babaja, I'll bring the same question to you. Perhaps, a second lockdown will be more effective to check this second wave, because our correspondent also talked about, the possibility of a third wave, which could knock harder. Also, I'd like you to address another aspect that may be fueling the spread of the second wave, which is, the reported purchase of PCR test results.
Yes, starting with the illegal purchase of PCR results. A lot of the people who come into our country, either through the land borders or through the airports, are not subjected to any form of test, because our system is not effective enough to ensure that you cannot get into this country without being subjected to a test. People have found a way around it now. In Abuja, and here in Lagos, the PCR tests are being purchased, and people just go and mesh with the rest of us without a care in the world. That can actually cause big problems, because they will go on to infect a lot of our citizens, since nobody has tested them. You could actually do a test today and by the next day be infected. But it is important for people to get tested before they come into our country. I also would not recommend a lockdown at this time, but government can approach this on a kind of sector by sector basis, because even the Britons
hold the thought there that. As you want to build up. We have Abdul from Zaria. Hello, Abdul. Good afternoon.
Hello. Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes, go ahead with your point. You're on.
Okay. This is a topic I love to comment on, because I've been looking for opportunity to comment on this topic. To me, the problem of this second wave, the spike or the surge in the cases, may be as a result of, to me, I would see it in three factors or three areas. I would like the Nigerian government to look at this holistically. First of all, there need to be sincerity on the part of government. Some people around the government, especially some state governments, don't take it serious. Like some state governments say there's no COVID-19. So when a state government or some part of people within government don't observe these safety protocols issued by NCDC or WHO, how do you want people in their states to comply with this? Secondly, there needs to be local approach towards enhancing enlightenment, public enlightenment, because if you look at most of the traditional institutions, the basic traditional institutions. I don't even mean the top ones, the basic traditional institutions that have direct connection with the people at the grassroots level. There need to be sensitization. People, they need to even recruit people, or NCDC or the Ministry of Health, either at the state level. They need to have collaboration, meeting them, briefing them, even using local languages to tell people about this, inform people. Because most people don't even believe that this virus is existing, especially if you go to the local areas. Even people who are even educated. The other things I would like to say is that the religion institutions, we have seen that even prior to the crossover to January 1st, we've seen a very renowned pastor coming on air. I'm sorry, I'm a Muslim, but I have to say the fact. I'm not being religious biased here. Coming on air to say that COVID-19 is a fraud. Now, most people around that attend the churches, and most of these religious institutions, they have schools, they have many thousands of worshippers.
All right, thank you very much, Abdul. Thank you very much, Abdul, for your three profound points, well taken and noted. Babaji, you were talking about lockdown and how it can be approached on a sector-by-sector basis.
Yes, it's not. We don't have to lock down the entire country. We just have to target some sectors where we believe that if we can effect a lockdown within those sectors, we'll be able to bring this under control. The whole idea is to ensure that we do not reach the level of an explosion. I think COVID-19 has reached the point now that it can't simply be wished away. We just have to, it's bound to remain with us like flu, like other diseases, but we have to do our best to keep it under control. So the lockdown, I will not recommend, but let's target. We know the sectors that we need to do something about. For example, with the stories that we are reading about, we've seen how the former VC of Unilag, came down to was struck by COVID-19, and he lost the battle. It was said that he attended a marriage ceremony. I was even the chairman of the ceremony. And some people who attended that same ceremony have even died as we speak. So we've got to do our best. Let our people realize that all of those big Owambes that they couldn't do from March through April, right to just a couple of months back, that at this time we can't afford to let them return to those parties, because once people mingle freely in that manner, big crowds and all that, this thing is bound to infect a lot more people. So we have to lock down that sector. I'm sorry, there's no, we have no option. That's what is being done abroad as well. And I've said it before that if the Saudis, despite the billions of dollars that come into their country in every Hajj season, if they can say no Hajj this year as they did last year, no lesser Hajj, then people should know that this thing is so dangerous and there's the need for concerted efforts to deal with it. We have no choice. We also need to expand testing capacity, because that's how you know that your next door neighbor is carrying the virus. Communities that we know are under-tested, we've got to move to those communities and put testing capacity in place in those communities. I'm happy that Lagos says, okay, they are going to build oxygen tents all over the place. It's a good thing to do, because whether we like it or not, this is we are in perilous times. I heard Lagos officials saying that 51% of bed spaces in this state are now occupied by COVID-19 patients. So when you talk about the big diseases, the big ailments that used to kill our people, malaria, road accident used to be number one, you know? So if beds that used to be occupied by road accident victims, beds that used to be occupied by people suffering from malaria, people suffering from all kinds of disease are now occupied by COVID-19 patients, 51% and counting. It suggests to us that this is something that we have to take seriously. But we also need to protect the frontline medical personnel very well, because the last few weeks there have been reports of doctors dying while protecting, doctors catching the virus while doing their work. Look at the younger brother.
1,000 personnel reported
the younger brother
infected.
of the deputy governor was a medical doctor. He was taking care of patients. He eventually yielded to COVID-19. These are not stories that we want to hear. We've got to protect them sufficiently so that person-to-person contact between this frontline medical personnel and patients are reduced to the barest minimum. Give them the kits that they need. Don't let it get to the point that the NMA will be threatening strike again before people are properly kitted, before people are provided with all that they need to protect the rest of us. So, in my view, once the medical personnel can feel that they are protected, they are better protected, they will give their best. You know, they will give their best. But if they are not thoroughly protected, then they won't be able to give their best. We must not get to that point.
Sam, still looking at, taking responsibility and the issue of attitudes, let's talk about vaccines. The NCDC DG had talked about, how Nigeria is expecting vaccines, but he could not put a time frame to it. But there are deeply held views about how vaccines are also, agendas for population control and all of that. But inevitably, the world must gather. What are your thoughts on this?
Sometimes when I read about these conspiracy theories, it makes me wonder, if we are not indeed taking this entire challenge, very lightly. So when you hear people talk about deliberate, move by some, yet to be defined people.
Bill Gates.
Making moves, to reduce world population, it makes you wonder. But the fact of the matter is that this is not the first time that the world is going to be in the throes of a pandemic. Way back in the early 90s, same challenge. So pandemics of this nature are nothing new, and I think that we should take it, very seriously. Yes, indeed, we have those conspiracy theories, but here we are. Whether real or imagined, the fact of the matter is that people are dropping dead. And I talked about a certain number, 19 million people who have been infected, nearly 2 million dead. In Nigeria here, we're talking about 90,000, over 8,300 dead. In fact, recent figures say that for a number of persons who have been tested, nearly 10% are likely to, be found to have caught the infection. What that simply means is that out of every 100 persons tested, you're probably looking at 10%, who have got the infection. And then the percentage of those who are also dying are rising, about 3%. These figures are out there in the public. So, but the world must find a solution to it. Sadly, while others have made very steady progress, you can't say the same for Nigeria. So we are looking up to the rest of the world, to come to our aid. Many others have invested and are expecting their shipments of vaccines to come. We've had government talk about 100,000, vaccines to arrive sometime, maybe end of January or February and all that. Again, that's hoping against hope. The fact of the matter is, we don't seem to be prepared the way we have noticed in some other countries. We've had certain projections made about the number of Nigerians who are going to be vaccinated maybe by the end of 2022, maybe some 40 million people and all that. And then how much government is planning to commit into the entire exercise. Some have talked about 500 billion, some have said 450 billion and all that. But the bottom line is that resources are going to be committed into it. 2, we don't have the capacity, we're going to be relying on others. I've also read about some other mischievous commentaries about how government is planning to allocate some kind of superior medication. I don't want to begin to advertise some companies here. While those that are said to come from China are reserved for the very vulnerable set of Nigerians. We hope that is not the real intention, but these stories are out there, you understand, where the very privileged ones are hoping to get the best of medication while the not original options are left for Nigerians. But like I said, we are living with this challenge and solutions must be found to it. If vaccines have been discovered and have been proved to be potent, then Nigeria must be ready to get its own share. But we don't seem to be primed for it. And how do I mean? We've been told that the logistics of this vaccine, moving these vaccines, is such that you need to store them in
temperature.
And you ask yourself, how ready are we? I mean, if you're talking about minus 20 degrees, how many of our facilities, how many of our institutions, are ready for this kind of top-level story that we're talking about? So a lot of issues, but we do hope that government, appreciates this consent and is making concerted efforts to ensure that even when these vaccines come, whether we pay for them or that they come in gratis from the likes of Gavi. I've heard that Gavi Alliance is one institution that we are looking up to give us free vaccines. Either way, we just must prime our system to receive these vaccines and ensure that there's transparency and there's clear there's accountability in the way these vaccines are going to be shared out to Nigerians. We don't want to have this claim or these allegations authenticated that the Pfizer brand is reserved for some people, while the China option or variant is reserved for some other people. We just hope it's not true. We want to trust our government to be able to do the right thing, always, and to that there is transparency, there's accountability, and that the money that has been set to be budgeted for this is not going to end up in private pockets. We want Nigerians not to go through this horror. We want to be able to ensure that at any point in time, people are secure, that our people just don't drop because of inadequacies on the part of government to ensure that the right things are done always.
So whether it is testing, whether it is vaccines, whether it is taking responsibility for safety protocols, it all goes back to the problem of attitude. And it's instructive to note that our last scholar talked about enlightenment, education. So BKO, please address that challenge. What levels now should perhaps the National Orientation Agency take education and enlightenment about every aspect of COVID-19 virus to the extent that the population can begin to take it seriously?
I think that we should simply not even leave it to any agency or government. Across the states, the enlightenment of our people should be taken seriously. We should educate the people, let the people realize that, look, this is a fight that humanity has to win. Humanity is in trouble, and humanity needs to come out of this victorious against a virus that is really running riot. You see, talking about vaccines, I do not see vaccines as the silver bullet that will simply help us to solve this problem, especially this coronavirus vaccine, because no one has told us that the coronavirus vaccine will provide immunity for anyone. When that question is put to them, they don't ever tell you that once you are vaccinated, you can't be infected again. So at that point, people will be worried. Yes, it will ensure that you don't get sick. But for how long? There are questions that need to be answered.
But perhaps in answering that, even medical practitioners will say that even the flu vaccine, you don't take it once and for all, that you may have to take it again.
Let me tell you, right now, there are even concerns that this new strain of the virus, that these vaccines may not even be able to tackle this new strain, because these vaccines had been in the works long before the emergence of this new strain. And some of the symptoms consistent with this new strain are different to the ones that we had always known. For example, hiccups. Once you are infected by this new strain of the virus, hiccups, you start feeling it, which makes even the breathlessness much more severe. And that's why you see increased use of oxygen and all that. So our people, what I would say to our people is, see, take responsibility for your own well-being. All the measures that have been outlined to help us defeat COVID-19 are cheap. They are not even as expensive as procuring millions of doses of vaccines and all that. Let's just stick to that. That is our best guarantee. That's our best guarantee, because who knows what even the third wave has in stock. Doctors are saying they are not sure that, because I was watching one of the foreign channels talking about the strain of the virus from South Africa, and they are saying, look, there's no guarantee that the virus can tackle that one, because it's different. It's just different to what they have been used to. So this is the...
So that's the reality of the COVID-19 virus. The cheapest way to defeating it is by protecting yourself and other people around you. Wash your hands regularly, keep the 2-meter physical distancing, and wear your nose mask. You're watching Journalists Hangout. We'll take a break now and be back with more. Stay with us. This is Journalists Hangout on TVC News. For decades, Nigeria sacrificed troops and resources to restore peace and democracy in many troubled countries like Liberia, Sierra Leone, Congo, and others. With the country now facing prolonged threat of Boko Haram insurgency, many citizens believe it is time for the international community to return the favor. But the federal government is yet to do the asking. As the battle to end insurgency and other forms of insecurity appears overwhelming, many prominent Nigerians, like the Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka and former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu, have enjoined the federal government to seek assistance from foreign countries. They say the time is now for the government to shun sheer national pride and accept help to protect the people. However, the governor of Niger State in north-central Nigeria, Abubakar Sani Bello, is troubled over rising insecurity in his state. Governor Bello met with President Buhari at the presidential villa in Abuja and pleaded for more security personnel to be deployed to his state. So when will President Buhari do the asking and seek his own help? Gentlemen, BQ, I'll bring that to you.
We are waiting for the president to to do the needful. I've read a few reports suggesting that the president is confident that this year the insurgency will be defeated. I hope that the insurgency gets defeated this year, because it's just after all these years and many lives lost, it's about time that we showed the Boko Haram fighters that they cannot defeat the Nigerian state. We are not interested in the politics of the war and the needless rivalry between even Nigeria and some of her neighbors. We are not interested in that. It's our country, and we are interested in the overall well-being of our country. Watching people die is something that is difficult to take. And by the nature of our job, it is difficult to simply ignore stories of killings. That's not going to happen. The journalists will report killings. You can call us names, but it's our job to report killings. It has nothing to do with love for the president, love for the first family, love for the ministers. No. If the stories are there, they would be reported. It's as simple as that. That is the job of the journalist. It's not a matter, you like bad news. Oh, news is news. People will report what happens in their country, and negative stories will be reported. So this is why we can only appeal, because the president promised to defeat Boko Haram. In fact, he made one promise that, look, if we do not bring back home the Chibok girls, we cannot say that we have defeated Boko Haram. And as we speak, more than 100 Chibok girls are still with Boko Haram. Apparently, some of them will be dead by now. Some will have been married to Boko Haram's commanders and all that. So there's a promise there that the president has to fulfill. It's on record that he promised to bring back the girls. It's on record that he promised to defeat the insurgency. By May, the president will be 6 years in office.
The more critical, points,
6 years in office, and people will keep asking the question, when are we going to have these guys defeated? I can understand why people are requesting for help. I have also asked for help repeatedly, and I know that Nigeria has contributed troops to bring peace to different countries of the world, different countries. Lebanon, through the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, in the very early 80s, late 70s and 80s, we were contributing troops. My own uncle fought in Lebanon. We sent troops to Angola. We sent troops to Sierra Leone. And even very recently, we've sent troops to Mali, sent troops to Sudan. So what is wrong in asking for help? We asked for help before. And that's why some other people are saying, look, these military contractors, if America can use military contractors to help it win the Gulf War, the first and the second Gulf War, America used military contractors. Those are the people that we sometimes call mercenaries. But the world doesn't call them mercenaries anymore, because that's not who they are. America hired military contractors to protect its own troops. For example, in the Green Zone in Iraq, that Green Zone was heavily fortified, heavily protected. Once you are inside the green zone, it is assumed that no one can kill you. And those guys provided tremendous protection for American troops. Many of the people who actually died in the Gulf War were not even American servicemen. They were these military contractors. So nothing stops us from bringing them to help us. They will bring some form of impetus, you know, that is lacking at this time. And they can also help train our troops, because Obasanjo used them in the past to even train our own troops here. Obasanjo helped them to train our troops. You know, so when Senator Ekweremadu and Professor Inka said, why don't we call for help? I agree absolutely with them. But it's one thing for the president to believe some of what he gets told. And some of the things that they tell the president are downright lies. Because if someone can sit down and write a speech for our president and put in the speech that all the areas that Boko Haram used to control have been recaptured and all the IDPs have returned home. June 12 speech last year. And the people who wrote that must have known that they were deceiving themselves, because at the time they were writing that speech for the president, no less than 21 IDP camps were fully operational in Borno State alone, with the biggest of them all being the one in Monguno. And IDPs are in Cameroon. People who had been attacked by Boko Haram in areas like Kalabalge. You know, remember the attack on Ran, where Boko Haram kidnapped a midwife and eventually murdered her. Many of the people, many of the IDPs fled into Cameroon. So we have IDPs, Nigerian IDPs in Cameroon. We have them in Niger. We have them in Chad. In fact, the governor of Borno State visited Chad recently to see the IDPs. He visited the Niger Republic to see them. He's gone to Niger Republic a number of times to see the IDPs. And they told our president that they've all gone home. There's no Borno resident or someone familiar with what goes on there who would hear that and be happy. Because you suggest that somebody somewhere was just trying to mislead everyone. And if the president is made to believe that they've all gone home, how do you then convince him that we are in an emergency situation, that this war is far from being won? The only way by which you can say the war has been won is if those attacks stop. Boko Haram went to Gaydam
just some days ago.
Late last week. And after that, they went to Gujuba. Gujuba is one of the biggest towns in Yobe State. And Gujuba was one of the local governments that Boko Haram controlled before the 2015 election. They went there, went to Gujuba to kill people again and burn houses. Just a matter of hours, not even days, after the attack on Gaydam. So when will those attacks stop? You've got as president to give the army marching orders that, look, this year you must win this war, otherwise heads will roll. There's nothing wrong in heads rolling. Because we are not saying decapitate people. The president has got to give his service chiefs the marching orders. Since he has made up his mind that he will not remove them, probably he wants to keep them until he leaves office. Fine. What we are after is results. We are not saying you must chase them away, you must chase them away. If you think you can still get the result, with them, fine. But let us see the result. That's what Nigerians are after. The more this war becomes difficult to win, and the more they see the people managing the security stay there, people will keep calling for their removal. That's just a natural thing, because elsewhere, they will have even gone on their own. But this is Nigeria. Everything in our country is inverted. So if they choose not to go, fine. If the president chooses not to remove them, fine. But the result, let us see the result of you're not removing them. But keeping them while things continue to degenerate, I don't think Nigerians will tolerate that. And since he has made that promise this year, that this is the year that the insurgency will be won, Nigerians will be waiting. Yeah, time is a gentleman, as a philosopher said. Time is a gentleman. Before you know it, 1 year will be gone, and people will remind the president, "Oh, you promised us that insurgency will not extend beyond 2021." What you need to do to defeat insurgency this year, defeat it. You are going to be 6 years in office by May. People will ask, how much longer will it take you as a former military man with all the experience as an infantry officer to defeat this ragtag, flip-flop wearing fighters?
That is seemingly overwhelming the Nigerian military forces. So I'll bring the same question to you, but really, on the flip side, is it having to do with the president's refusal to remove the rank and file of the leadership of the military, or the need to shun national pride and look outside for help?
My response to the first leg of your question would be to categorically state that if Mr. President wants to be deceived, he will be deceived. You get the point? And he'll be so deceived because he deliberately chooses to turn his eyes away from the truth.
Hold it there. We have Onyedikachi from France. Good afternoon, Onyedikachi.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I have been trying to reach the line here, but it seems backlog of network. And I would want to comment on the COVID issue, if I'm permitted. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm calling because I have some worry over the situation of COVID in Nigeria. A lot of people do not believe that COVID exists. I'm calling because I live close to a cemetery here in Paris, and I see a great number of people buried every day. And the thing is, I do not know why we've not started some kind of research on our own with regards to the vaccine and all that. We are dependent so much on other countries to give us the vaccine. Another thing is COVID-19 is not the only coronavirus that has been in existence. I'm a microbiologist. I just got my PhD in microbiology, and I'm talking because I have done a little bit of research of coronavirus. We had the SARS, we had the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. They didn't linger this long because humans like us were able to curtail it. But with what is happening now, I see some kind of selfishness on the part of humans. We do not want to know, in fact, how this disease comes across, how it penetrates into the human population, because this is an animal virus to start with. How it penetrated into the animal population, we do not even want to care about that. And for people saying that COVID is not in existence, I feel it is the height of the selfishness, and that is why. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Am I being heard?
Yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
I see on the part of humans, like I was saying, selfishness. We do not want to know, and we are not even taking appropriate measures to curtail the virus.
All right. Thank you very much, Onyedikachi from France. All points taken. Thank you for your contribution. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so I had earlier, tried to explain why I think that the president can only be deceived if he chooses to be deceived. And that is because if he applies himself very well to the task before him, he would leave his office and go see things at the war front himself. And I don't think that the president has applied himself so very well in that respect. I like to compare his approach to what the governor of Borno State, Zulum, has done in terms of crisis management. You find him at regular intervals, visit with the territory. Visit with citizens in the territories that have been, being harassed by terrorists. So if Mr. President wants to know firsthand what is happening, he can't get to know that. But he wouldn't, except he visits occasionally, to see what is happening. So there's been this tendency to want to hold the service chiefs responsible. Yes, there's nothing wrong with that, but ultimately the buck stops on Mr. President's table, and he needs to be reminded that he is indeed the commander-in-chief, and that's the expectation of Nigerians, that he would, live up to his promises. A few days ago, I had the opportunity to listen to Governor Zulum, narrate, and that was an interview conducted by TVC. Spoke extensively about what he thought were wrong, with our approach, to the war. He talked about lack of equipment, lack of commitment. He talked about sabotage. He talked about, the difficulty of appreciating why our military cannot manage, a territory that is just barely, 20 kilometers outside Maiduguri. And it tells you that there's a whole lot that our people are not being told about the way, the war is being prosecuted. So talking about national pride, I think we face a very desperate situation, and desperate situations demand desperate solutions. So I would agree completely with the laureate, Wole Soyinka, who said that the situation has become so bad that if we need to get outside help, we should. It is not about national pride now. We want, just like Jide said, we want the lives of Nigerians to be protected, and that's the primary responsibility of government. If the government fails, then it has failed completely. So whatever it is that we need to do, we should do that. We don't need Soyinka to remind us. At different points, at this forum, we've talked about it. We need to set that aside. We have the multinational joint task force in that area. That is one approach. But again, it has its limitations because there are rules of engagement and all that. So they don't seem to have all the rights to get into battle, remain there and all that. But, so the countries that are part of the collaboration simply limit themselves to what the agreements are. But Nigeria needs to appreciate the fact, or our service chiefs, and indeed those who are in charge, of prosecuting the war, needs to understand that the kind of challenge that we face is one that requires all our neighbors to be involved in this war. The people in Niger are feeling the heat. The people in Cameroon are feeling the heat. The people in Chad are feeling the heat. So you ask yourself, why don't we seem to have, a sense of understanding where everybody comes together? We've had stuff about service chiefs, giving the impression that we're too big. So why should we go ask for assistance from in quote, smaller countries? And of these smaller countries, of course, we know have stronger armed forces and experience. Jide has always talked about what the Chadians are able to do. And we all know that. Mm-hmm. We've seen the president lead the war. Mm. I mean, the pictures are all over the place. Mm-hmm. The videos are all over the place. And Nigerians are asking themselves, when will Mr. President
do same?
Not just lead the war, but even visit with the combatants. We're talking about morale here. Morale rather.
Them in the past.
Yeah, but what we're saying is, you have a Zulum who would, almost on a weekly basis, take all the risk. The images are out there. the best way you can give guarantees or assurances that you are indeed committed to this battle, which is one of the keys of the promises you made to Nigerians.
That's Zulum in Chad.
Yeah.
These are pictures from
Chad.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the president of Chad.
So you have it so desperate that a governor in Nigeria will be leading what ordinarily ought to be a diplomatic, mission, as it were.
No, because his people are
in
the IDP camps there.
Exactly.
So, and he went to thank them.
And they're the president's people also, by the way. This brings me to the next question. We have seen how, we've had the same service chiefs hold office for years, and the president has refused to heed calls to change the service chiefs so that they can see a more refreshing approach to the battle against insurgency. So if that's what we're going to see, that will trail the calls for Nigeria to look outside for help, what is the fate of the war against insurgency in the year 2021 in Nigeria? But before you answer that, BK, I'll bring that to you. We apologize, Abdullahi, for keeping you on, and I hear that we've lost that call. Please try again to call into Journalist Hangout. We're waiting to take your call. BK.
You see, my biggest concern is that bandits have come to even distract the army. If we can put enough troops in Borno State, maybe put like between 60 to 70,000 troops in Borno, because we've never put up to that number in Borno State, it will go a long way. The truth is, even if you use the Air Force to soften a target, to strafe the surface troops of the enemy, you still need to put your own troops on ground so that they can hold that place. We are unable to do that.
You've said that over and over.
We are unable to do that. Look, I was reading about Nigerian troops going to the spiritual headquarters of Boko Haram, Alagarno. We have captured Alagarno in the past. So we are faced with the situation which you capture today, you fail to remain there, and they come back. If that place is crucial to them, of course they will come back. That's the way it is even with some of those communities in Borno North. If the communities keeping those places are crucial to their line of supply, crucial to them retaining their line of supply, they are going to do whatever it costs to remain there. And that's why you see a dusty community that look like it's of no value. Yet, our soldiers and Boko Haram will fight till death over it. And you ask yourself, what's really here? Some of the places where we have lost troops, a lot of our troops in the past, you ask yourself, what is in Zari, for example? What is there in Zari? What is in Metele, in Abadam local government, where we lost many troops? Those two communities, Metele, Zari, we lost many troops. You ask yourself, what really is in these two communities? Well, it's because the enemy is determined to keep its line of supply safe. So they will do whatever it costs to make sure that they hold on to that place. Now, my biggest concern is the distraction of the army. I wish the army can simply focus on Boko Haram, honestly, so that whatever happens, we know that all their attention and the attention of our neighbors as well focused on Boko Haram. But what do we have? These same soldiers are also being used to fight bandits. And those bandits too have shown that they have weapons, RPGs, some of them mortar rounds. So if the police can be sufficiently equipped, they should be able to deal with armed banditry. Because we've seen a unit of the police decimate armed bandits somewhere in Kaduna State, because they were provided with APCs and the rest. You know, it gives you confidence. When you are fighting inside a very thick armored vehicle, you have the feeling that nothing will happen to you. And they dealt effectively with those guys. I interviewed the IG over, and the IG said, we supplied them with new weapons. And their morale was high. When you give the army the weapons that they need, when you give the police the weapons that they need, their morale will be high. You will see them singing ahead of the battle. They will be the ones to say, okay, Shebi, you call yourself Boko Haram, let us fight. That's the way it should be. Look at Niger State, look at what the governor is saying. I pity the governor because Niger State looks like a home for bandits now. Places like Rafi, local government, Moya, local government, Shiroro, bandits are almost in complete control. I'm not surprised. You know, we've talked about this thing so many times. So for him to go to the president, for Abulolo to go to the president and say, please, this is what we are facing, it shows that we are not exaggerating. Those who think we just sit here and we are talking about bad news, why didn't the governor just sit in his house? Why did he go to complain to the president? Because he knows that his people are being killed like flies. There are pictures of people in Niger State chased out of their homes by bandits. Niger is the largest state in Nigeria, and plenty of forests. Plenty of habitation for these people. Even Old Games Reserve, they've taken over Old Games Reserve. So we will talk about it. We will talk about it. I give that guarantee. Until we are able to solve these problems, we'll keep talking about it. The Niger governor has asked for more security personnel. Is the same thing that the Borno governor too is asking for. If you ask Masari too in Katsina, I'm sure he will ask.
Same with the man in Zamfara.
Yes, if you ask Bello Muhammad Matawale in Zamfara, he too will ask for more troops. Because we simply do not have enough.
Niger's proximity to Abuja. So if the president wants to be lied to, he has enough evidence to counter the lies.
If he doesn't want to be lied to.
Yes, he doesn't want to be lied to. I wish we could continue with this topic, but we must move on. There is still much ado about the National Identification Number, NIN registration in the country. Many Nigerians were left stranded at the National Identity Management Commission NIMC offices nationwide last week. The workers halted the NIN registration due to a strike over lack of enhanced pay and better protection against COVID-19. Now the strike has been called off after a meeting with the federal government, and the NIN centers are set for an influx of enrollees from Monday to get registered. And the NIN is emerging to be a requirement for a lot of crucial things that you must do as a citizen of Nigeria. But first of all, gentlemen, do you have your NIN? Do you have your NIN, VQ? I have mine.
I have mine.
And so let's start with you, Sam. What did you go through in order to get it?
Well, I would say that it wasn't as complicated because I had responded very early. You know, at the time, the government made it mandatory for citizens to have their NIM numbers. So I think that's the benefit of timeliness. So at the time, my family and I, approached the relevant institutions. It wasn't as rowdy as this. And I'm glad to say that every member of my household, has the NIM. And we have also applied for integration with our telephone lines. But the pictures that we see out today are very disturbing.
Yeah.
Again, that is because we seem to have waited for the last minute to want to get these things done. It's almost typical, of Nigerians. But you don't blame the people, all the time. Sometimes fantastic initiative, fantastic policies on the part of government, but very poor communication, And listening to the minister, sometimes you wonder if this entire thing was not meant to, punish people for not, doing the right thing, at the onset. But I think that the government needs to show a lot more restraint, show a bit more understanding of the development, at the moment. At a time when we're talking about the danger of getting ourselves crowded, you wonder if this is the right time to force Nigerians, to go to these centers and have themselves registered, especially when the numbers are now needed, not just for your telephone lines. So almost every aspect of our lives, owning a car or a driver's license, or registering your car and all that. There is no alternative to having a database that is credible. So yes, we need to appreciate that government is doing the right thing, but citizens have to also understand that this is a must, that the only way we can plan better as a people, as a country, is to have a database that is credible, that can help us do things a lot easier, and efficiently, as it is. So, talking about what next week would look like, I shudder to think that we are going to be in for a hell of a time. If the government insists that it's not going to shift, the dates, and also insists that people must get registered at this time that we're having the second wave of COVID-19, I think that there is need for a rethink, because we don't seem to have put firmly on ground, structures that can handle the kind of numbers that we are seeing at the moment. I read sometime last week that they now have the call-up option where you go, again, very manual, and you wonder why we're doing this in 2021, where it's like the tally number, just go there and say, okay, I'm number 20, and they say your number, would qualify you to come a week from today. And you wonder if that is the best approach to it. Because Nigerians don't trust their government enough. So even when they go get these numbers or call-up numbers, they don't believe that it works, because there's corruption in the system. Mm-hmm. So even when you go and get your number, there are no guarantees that that number will work for you, because all you need, and I've heard reports all over the place about NIMSI. I can't confirm this, but there are reports out there that NIMSI officials are asking for making a hell of it. And when senior government officials or aides to governors take to the media space and say things like this, you don't want to doubt completely that operatives of NIMSI, some of them, the very bad ones, I don't want to believe that all of them are involved in this. Of course, there will always be a few bad eggs who would want to sabotage the system, for their own personal gain. So I think that the authorities need to look at this development. One, do a rethink or do a review of the challenges that Nigerians face at the moment, and ask ourselves very honest questions as to whether we should go on with this in the face of the pandemic, and then the kind of structures that we have in place that can handle the numbers, the surge that we have seen, and the one that we're likely to see in the days ahead. Which is perhaps the most sticking point, arising from the NIN registration, the fact that the second wave of COVID-19 is here with us, and Babajide has addressed it. There's so many issues bedeviling NIN registration, but I guess we have some time to look at, about at least 80% of it. First of all, one concern trailing it is that there is the BVN requirement for you to get your NIN. And there's a good percentage of Nigerians that are yet unbanked. Babajide, what are your thoughts on this?
Especially in the rural areas, so many of our people have no bank accounts. Bandits, armed robbers have literally overrun banks in rural areas. Now, in my village, we used to have a bank. But the last time I went home, I noticed that the building that bank used to occupy is now a mini shopping mall. It's that bad. because rural areas are under-policed, when you put banks in those areas, those boys find it easy to just overrun those banks. Maybe you have just 3 policemen, they overrun the bank and escape. So banks, even in some cases, banks refuse to open for months. Look at a place like even Ijebode, the Ijebode area, banks refuse to work for a long time because of insecurity, and they need to protect their own staff. So that is one. I believe that the NIN idea is a good one, but we have chosen to approach it the wrong way. What were we waiting for all of these years? Even if you are going to set a deadline, because Nigerians will always wait until the last minute to do things, we didn't show any form of seriousness until now. We didn't show, because what was the level of enlightenment? Did we also even improve capacity for people to register before now? Because I saw so many people who will go and sit as early as 5:30 waiting for these officials, the NIMC officials, to register them. We didn't show seriousness until December. And suddenly we came up with an unrealistic deadline. I don't know why the minister chose to behave like that. He knew in his heart that that deadline was not realistic, because you've got to ask yourself, what do we have on ground? How many offices do the telcos have in Lagos, for example, or Abuja? Even if all of them are going to be working, if they are going to even face this idea of linking NIN to people's GSM lines squarely, how many can they do in a day? Because we have to look at the mechanism, ask ourselves, how many, what is the capacity that you can do in a day? So we have a situation in which the telcos in Nigeria have 207.58 mobile lines registered with them. And today, we've only been able to link 43 million with their SIM, with their NIN. So about 164 million Nigerians are at risk of being disconnected. What will happen? Are they going to simply disconnect Nigerians? Have they looked at the implications of doing that for businesses? Are you just going to wake up one day and simply disconnect 164 million Nigerians? No matter how good your intention is, you can't simply disconnect 164 million Nigerians. All you can do is have a phased or an incremental, what's it called?
Response, arrangement?
Just have a time ceiling that is much more flexible for our people. After all, account holders in banks, they also had to live with a deadline for BVN. But it all went on smoothly. Because they didn't just suddenly say, okay, within this unrealizable time, you must all have your BVN. They knew that such a thing would take some time. And given the huge numbers of people we are seeing.
We have a Kanem from Bauchi. Hello?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry we kept you on. Go ahead now.
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Kanem.
Yes, please.
We can hear you.
Okay. Please, I thank you for what you've been doing. Can you educate me? I have the NIMC card, but the numbers appearing here is more than 11. So please, how do I know my NIM number?
Have you gone to your local government, the designated registration point for your registration? If you have done that, you would get a tracking number initially, a tracking card, and then you also get your the original NIN registration card, which shows your number.
I have the national ID card. I have the national ID card with the clip, everything. But the number on the national ID card is 16 digits. But they say it's 11. So how do I locate 11 from this number, please?
That's a strange one.
Well, only an NIMC official can answer that question.
And there were all kinds of problems. Some, their names misspelled and all that.
Yes.
Okay. So if that's all, thank you for calling Ekanen.
Giving our people all kinds of concerns. Some have been told you have to pay. And when you tell Nigerians, look, you have to pay before some of these things are rectified, they will not come back. They will not come back.
And the process of rectification is another very
cumbersome.
It's very cumbersome.
It's very cumbersome. It's just, I'm just wondering how we can possibly, because I expected the deadline to be longer. I knew that it was inevitable that sanity will prevail and that the deadline, the first deadline, will be extended. You know, it's been extended now. And for those who are not registered at all, they are saying, okay, it has to be synced with their SIM card by February 9. Given the rate at which we are able to register new people, it just looks unlikely that we'll be able to go far before that February 9.
True.
In no time, February 9 will be upon us. How many people would we have succeeded in registering at that time? There are people who will look at the crowd, you know, in those outlets, registration outlets, and tell themselves that it's better to stay at home than risk dying through COVID. People will have to make that choice, whether it is worth taking that risk. You know? So, in my view, this is something that if we have up to 6 months, let's just continue to do this on an incremental basis. You know? If we have up to 6 months, we will have gone really far. But to simply say February 9, that means you just have a mission to simply disconnect more than half of Nigerian phone users.
And there's an economic side to it.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, because if you do that, you're simply telling the telcos that they should prepare for a huge revenue loss.
They won't make money.
But BK, another worry on that point is the psyche of Nigerians. If you gave Nigerians 6 months, you are telling Nigerians to relax.
How did the banks do the BVN thing? That's the thing.
Okay.
And
before
it
you
has
take
to be,
that,
it can also be.
Let's take joy
It can
from
also
worry.
be a continuous thing.
Yes.
Like the continuous registration is for election.
Yes.
I'd like you to respond to that, but let's take joy from worry. Good evening, Joy. Good afternoon, rather.
It's gone.
Oh, okay, Joy, please. Are you there, Joy?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you're on. Go ahead.
Okay, please, I want to ask about this NIN registration. Is it applicable to foreigners? I mean, companies that have maybe MTN line or Air. Because we tried through the instruction they gave on the phone, through text message, that isn't going well. So what are we going to do to get the new number?
Okay, thank you very much for your question, Joy. Well, I wish we had an NIMC official here. So many questions.
I've heard that. I've had that question.
That concern.
Raised. That concern, and it speaks to the fact that is it automatic that if you own a number, then you should be entitled to any number. So if you're a foreigner in Nigeria, for instance, who who is legitimately here doing business. It simply means that you have to go through the process and all that. So the question that is being asked, which I don't have an answer to, is whether a foreigner is qualified, to be in this database that appears to be, reserved, for Nigerians. Yes.
I mean, for some countries.
If we can't use his line here, if he can't use his line here, then how does he do business? I believe that they too have to register, but at least you are going to it's going to be indicated that you are not in Nigeria.
Yes.
So if everyone must have it linked to their SIM cards, I know that they are trying to identify the bad boys. All these people doing kidnapping and all that. They are trying to identify all these bad people, and they are making it difficult for us to have these pre-registered lines and all that, because that's what kidnappers and other people use. Once they are through with it, they just throw the SIM away. I understand what the minister is trying to achieve, but if the point is that if you don't have the NIN linked to your SIM card, then you'll be disconnected. It means that even if you are a foreigner, you are here, you must also get it.
These are very valid questions for NIMC to answer. The concern about, being a foreigner and needing the NIN. The other guy also talked about having 16-digit numbers instead of 11. Now, Joy also made a concern, so I hope NIMC officials are watching. There's also, the concern about paying excessively to get your NIN. Some places that are not designated are also registering. So NIMC should address this. I wish there's more time, but we must move on to the next topic. Secret recruitments by ministries, departments, and agencies of government are not new. But the rising cases of unemployment is making the act a profitable business for some persons. In a move to curbing this, the House of Representatives is considering laws to criminalize secret recruitments by federal agencies. The bill, titled A Bill for an Act to Prohibit Secret Recruitment in the Federal Public Service and to make elaborate provisions for transparency in recruitment in the public service through publication of vacancies and for other matters connected therewith, has passed first reading at the lower chamber. Gentlemen, this is not the first, attempt to curbing such a problem in the public service. We also, have had a long time in Nigeria to deal with ghost workers. Will this be the silver bullet, to curbing secret recruitments and other related problems in the Nigerian public service? BQ.
If the law is applied, if it's applied to everyone, one of the problems we face, one of the big problems we face is that our laws are not applied to everybody. And the people in government too do not help matters. They simply want to help their own people. We've heard about recruitments into CBN, into some of the government agencies, discussed in hushed tones. They do not make the recruitment public so that they can bring in their own people. It happens both at state level and at the federal level. It's just that the ones that bother Nigerians the most are those ones that happen at the federal level. And I can see why the National Assembly is concerned, because there have been petitions in the past that the National Assembly had to respond to. People have had to complain that they had of secret recruitment going on, is something that should bother every Nigerian, because what are we saying? we are all Nigerians. This thing, there should be a level playing field. That's how we can get the best. A situation in which some people, simply because they are in government, would only let their friends, members of their families be aware that a recruitment exercise is going on in a government agency or parastatal. It's not the right thing to do. Even the so-called lawmakers too, they too profit from this kind of thing, because they simply will just send their list of their children of their supporters, to the people who run those agencies, maybe the chairman of one of the parastatals of government. They say, okay, I have 10 individuals, there is vacancy in customs. I have 10. You see the chairman of the Senate Committee on Customs, sending the list. They first take care of all of their own people before they remember the ordinary people. In our country now, because of rampant unemployment, it's extremely competitive to get into the big federal government agencies and parastatals, DMO, NNPC, the rest of them. People who had worked in those places before, children of, they make sure that their own children are able to literally supplant them. Once they are retiring, there are vacancies, they take care of the children of their former bosses. They bring those ones in, rather than throw the thing open to all comers, to everyone who is qualified. That is what is happening. So this is, I don't know what will eventually happen with this bill, but at least it sends a clear signal that this problem is a big one and is a problem that we need to solve. But even the people in the National Assembly, they are also part of the problem. You can see even the temporary job that the president wants to give to people.
774,000.
Yes, at the local government level. You can see the battle that these guys are waging against our friend Keyamo, because they simply want to be in control. They simply want to bring in their own people. So that's the way the job situation is in our country, And people, we've heard about even the president is said to be mad about even promotion in the police. It's now that it's for the ISB that the Police Service Commission, there was a petition that was sent to the president that the Police Service Commission simply would take money from people and have them promoted. These are negative things happening in our country. Even recruitment of police officers too.
It's not a battle between PSC and
the IG of police.
The PSC is saying, look, by law we should be the one to recruit. And even, we have not even cleared the scandal that was said to have trailed the last recruitment, whereby some people who were not part of screening, who are not just got recruited. So these are the things happening in our country. How can people who did not go through any form of screening will suddenly be recruited into the police? We read about these things, but it's just our hope that one day some of these terrible things will stop happening.
Bikiko says if the law can be applied.
Yes.
But, given these realities that he also talked about, is this bill rather, being proposed just to show Mr. President that I'm working in the National Assembly, or how can the system cleanse itself?
Tough question. Is hope lost? Totally lost? I would say no. Nations are governed by laws. how well would this proposed bill perform if eventually enacted into law is a different question. So, but our hope first is that it will go through the processes and receive the support of other lawmakers and then, become law. That would suggest that we already don't have a law that addresses these gaps. If that is the case, one cannot but, support that this law, sees, the light of day, because that's the only way you can speak to issues of transparency, to issues of, accountability. And that is what matters to Nigerians. Nigerians want to see a level playing field where the children of the rich, the children of the poor, have a level playing field, to compete. But that's not what we have at the moment. In fact, corruption can be called by several names. It's not only when you steal money, it's corruption when those who are in privileged positions ensure that those that are vulnerable don't ever get the opportunity to, find themselves in very privileged ministries, departments, or agencies. So I think I see what is happening as a huge scam. You call it, recruitment. Secret recruitment, but it's a huge scam, really. Where those who are in a position, to protect the rest of us simply take advantage of their presence in the system to allocate resources, or privileges or certain rights, to themselves. So laws or bills of this nature, what we will do at this level as media practitioners is to speak, in a way to encourage that it should, be enacted. And if and when it is enacted, that it is also implemented in a way that it helps, to strengthen some of these gaps or inefficiencies or deficiencies that we see in the system. Unless that is done, we're going to continue to have experiences of the kind that we had not too long ago on October 20th, when the youth rose. Let nobody be deceived. It could get, to the point where those who feel shortchanged also not just take placards, but also, go after those who they think have cornered the resources of the state to themselves.
And this brings to mind the words of activist Aisha Yusufu in Nigeria, where the son of nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the program. Babajide Kolade and Sam Ibemere.
My pleasure.
That's all on Journalists Hangout on Sunday. You can join us again tomorrow for another edition. That's the regular edition of the program. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Thank you again for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Bye for now.